The morning had started like any
Okay.
other for billionaire
How
Raymond Holt.
dare you?
His
You
calendar was
clumsy
stacked with
fool. Look at
meetings,
this
calls,
mess.
and appointments that would normally keep him tethered to boardrooms and skyscrapers. But that day, he felt a gnawing restlessness, an urge to step away from the gloss of high society and revisit the roots of his empire. Years ago, when he first started investing, one of his earliest acquisitions had been a string of diners across the city. Most had thrived, thanks to his managers and systems, but he hadn't set foot in one for years. Something inside him whispered to check in, unannounced. And so he drove to one of the oldest locations, a little red-bricked diner tucked between a laundromat and a gas station. The bell over the door jingled when he entered, releasing a faint aroma of fresh coffee, fried eggs, and nostalgia. The diner wasn't glamorous, faded menus, cracked leather booths, and a jukebox that hadn't worked in decades. But there was a warmth to it, a heartbeat that reminded him of simpler days. Slipping into a corner booth, Holt adjusted his suit jacket, hoping to blend in. He wanted to observe, not announce himself. His eyes scanned the room, and that's when he noticed her. The waitress. She couldn't have been more than 24 or 25, with tired eyes that still carried an ember of kindness. She moved swiftly between tables, balancing a tray with practiced precision. But what caught Holt's attention wasn't her service, it was her arm. Her left arm was wrapped in a makeshift bandage, stiff and awkward, as if it had been hastily done at home. Every time she lifted a plate of pancakes or poured steaming coffee, he saw her wince. She tried to hide it with a smile, but the pain was undeniable. Written across her face in fleeting expressions, she hoped no one noticed. Holt leaned back in his booth, intrigued. He had spent years around people who masked their true selves, politicians, CEOs, socialites, yet this young woman's struggle was laid bare in every strained movement. He found himself wondering, why was she working with what looked like a serious injury? Didn't she have anyone to cover her shift? Or perhaps she couldn't afford to miss a single day. When she finally approached his table, Holt studied her more closely. "Good morning, sir," she said, setting a menu down in front of him. Her voice was soft, melodic, but carried an undercurrent of exhaustion. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear with her good hand and asked, "Yo, what can I get you today?" "A coffee," Holt replied, his tone even, but his curiosity wouldn't let go. He watched as she walked away, balancing cups and plates with one strong arm while the other hung close to her body like a fragile wing. Every now and then, she would stop to chat with an elderly customer, offering a warmth that seemed almost supernatural given the circumstances. She wasn't just serving food. She was serving comfort, dignity, and presence, even while hiding her own suffering. As Holt sipped his coffee, his mind began to wander. He had donated millions to charities, funded hospitals, and made speeches about compassion. Yet here in this little diner sat a young woman embodying a quiet resilience he rarely saw in the halls of power. She wasn't asking for pity, wasn't looking for a savior. She was simply surviving. And something about that struck him in a way he hadn't expected. By the time she returned to check on him, Holt's heart was pounding with questions he couldn't yet form. Who was she? What happened to her arm? And most importantly, what kind of strength kept her moving forward when most would have collapsed? For the first time in years, the billionaire felt small, not because of wealth or status, but because he realized he might be in the presence of someone whose strength went far beyond his own. When the waitress, Tasha, as she finally told him, set down his refill of coffee, Raymond Holt leaned forward. His instincts as a businessman told him there was more behind her polite smile and worn-down demeanor. He had spent decades reading people, spotting the slightest cracks in their masks. Hers was not the mask of someone who sought attention. It was the mask of someone carrying a burden too heavy for her shoulders. "That arm of yours," Holt said gently, breaking the silence, "looks worse than you're letting on. Why are you here working like this?" For a moment, Tasha froze. Her eyes flickered with caution as if deciding whether to brush off his concern or tell the truth. She looked away, then back at him, and finally exhaled a long, weary sigh. "Because if I don't work," she whispered, "we don't eat." Holt felt the weight in her words instantly. She explained that 3 weeks ago, she had slipped and fallen outside her apartment building, fracturing her arm. The hospital had patched her up, but without insurance, the bills piled up fast. The doctor had told her to take time off and rest, but time off meant no paycheck. No paycheck meant losing her apartment, leaving her younger brother without a home. My brother's only 14, she continued, her voice trembling. I promised him I'd keep him in school, that I'd protect him from ending up on the streets like our mother did. She paused, swallowing the lump in her throat. So I come here every morning, wrap this arm up as best I can, and just keep moving. Because if I don't, we've got nowhere to go. Holt's chest tightened. He had heard stories of hardship before, but rarely had he heard them spoken with such quiet dignity. He was about to offer words of comfort when Tasha leaned closer, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. And it's not just for us, she said. There are 3 kids in my neighborhood. Their mom, she disappeared months ago. I don't know where she went. Some say she left, others say worse. But those kids were going hungry. So every paycheck I get, I buy extra groceries, extra meals, and drop them off. Nobody knows. I don't want praise. I just can't stand seeing them suffer the way I did growing up. Holt sat back, stunned. Here she was, a young woman with a broken arm, bills she couldn't pay, and a brother depending on her, yet she still carried others on her back. He thought about the lavish charity galas he attended, where guests clinked champagne glasses and pledged money they barely felt missing. But this was charity without cameras, compassion without applause. It was real. As Tasha excused herself to tend to another table, Holt stared into his untouched coffee, his thoughts swirling. For years, he had measured success by balance sheets and stock prices, believing his donations made him a man of generosity. But Tasha's quiet sacrifice exposed a truth he hadn't considered. True wealth wasn't the money sitting in bank accounts, it was the willingness to give when you had almost nothing. When she returned to his booth, Holt looked at her differently. Tasha, he said softly, his voice carrying a rare vulnerability. You've just taught me more about strength than I've learned in my entire career. She blinked, surprised, unsure how to respond. He didn't elaborate, didn't reveal who he was. He simply left a generous tip on the table and rose from his booth. As he walked out of the diner, the billionaire felt something shift inside him. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about mergers or profit margins. He was thinking about a young woman with a broken arm, a fierce heart, and a spirit strong enough to change the way he saw the world. And Raymond Holt knew, without a doubt, that this wasn't the last time their paths would cross.